It's Bronzebird here with another video. Before I begin, like and subscribe. Thank you. So just to give an idea of what's going on today, I actually want to give a big shout out to one of my subscribers who went ahead and gave me a news article to talk over or go over. It inspired me to actually make this video. So thank you, subscriber, for bringing that in. So today's topic of conversation is going to be about, obviously, Columbia University following this woke crap. And it is so unbelievable what they've done that they're announcing for graduation to separate people by their race, their income. I think mainly it was their income. And then obviously they have well, not obviously, but they have a separate graduation for the LGBTQ community. And you know how far they go with that. Like the LGBTQ community is like basically another race at this point. But we're going to talk about that today, as well as talk about also this whole entire thing of critical race theory, where this I feel is more of a training to have so-called white people feel bad for being so-called white, and then for so-called black people to belittle so-called white people for being so-called white. And my thing about this is this. So-called black people have a big problem when it comes to letting go of the past, really, kind of, because there's rights and wrongs to the situations. But at the same time, don't let the struggle be enough for you to feel like you're just a bad person for existing as a so-called black person, if you understand my drift. Like, there's nothing wrong with being a so-called black person. You know, when you know your history, you know your lineage and all these different things, there's nothing wrong with being a so-called black person. You know, and I think the people get into this whole entire conversation of, you know, just trying to be like, well, you don't know my struggle, my ancestors in slavery and this, that, and the third. This is why I would advise so-called black people to just learn history, because the slavery narrative gets old. If you can't tell me any stories before slavery, then it's kind of like, what are you talking about? Or even after slavery, of all these towns and all of these inventions and all these different things built by so-called black people that we still don't get credit for to this day. But I'm just rambling. So we're going to get into this topic of conversation so I can give you the perspective of what Columbia University is announcing this year. All right, let's check it out. So right here, this is what it says right here. Shout outs to USA Today. Columbia University offering graduation ceremonies based on race, ethnicity, and income status. Shout outs to Dustin Barnes. Now, I just randomly seen this, but this is pretty much crazy. So let me just read the headlines real quick. So Columbia University holds virtual graduation, of course, because it's coronavirus. Students still living at Columbia University were lucky to be able to celebrate graduation Wednesday alongside roommates and friends who were unable to go home when stay-at-home orders went into effect in New York as a result of the coronavirus. Next month, Columbia University will offer 6 additional graduation ceremonies based on race, ethnicity, and other self-identifying factors of undergraduate students. And I don't understand why that is. This is the weird thing about it. And especially certain people might feel uncomfortable, especially the income status, if they don't earn enough, or, you know, maybe there might be people of a certain nation that might have a higher income status and might feel insecure because they feel like they feel like they're, well, it's separation. I mean, separation isn't going to be, like, separation is going to be a problem, but then again, it's just like, you know, does it benefit all or does it belittle other people? You know, and I understand what that would feel like, you know what I mean? Like, why is it that it's all of this? I don't understand the division, but let's read on. Native, Asian, Latino, and Black graduations are listed as options where students can register, as well as a lavender graduation for the LGBTQ community and a ceremony for first generation and low income students. I'm telling you, man, this is crazy. A university spokesperson told USA Today these events are in addition to the university-wide commencement ceremony and are open to any student who wants to participate. In many cases, the voluntary multicultural ceremonies initially were created by alumni and students. And that right there was something I kept into my subconscious, because now I'm just like, oh, this wasn't, I mean, I know that they took the surveys about it and asked the students and alumni about it, but I find it interesting. Like, they was just like, well, we don't want to be bunched up with white students. We don't want to be bunched up with Black students, Asians. Because when I had graduated and stuff like that, I wasn't thinking about, oh, well, I'm sitting next to a white person at graduation. I'm sitting next to an Asian person. I'm just like, hey, look, listen, I'm graduating. I don't care about none of this. But why is this now a problem? Like, why is this now a separation of like race and all these different things, and especially income status? This is amazing. Let me go on, y'all. These events provide a more intimate setting for students and guests to gather, incorporate meaningful cultural traditions, and celebrate the specific contributions and achievements of their communities. So I guess we're talking inclusivity. Okay, hold up. Inclusivity now? Is that what we're talking about? Read a statement on the school's website. This is America. Gender expression is a socially distanced world. Well, that's different. Let's go down, shall we? Multicultural graduation ceremonies are common at other colleges across the nation. Georgetown University, which holds ceremonies for Asian, African, and Latino communities, says the events are a way to bring students of color together. Texas Women's University and Portland State University also have multicultural graduation events planned later this year. And that's about it from the article. I just found it a little bit amazing. And, you know, if you guys want to comment in the comment section about this, my thing about it is like, why is it now? You know what I'm saying? And my thing about it is what made these students and people across the nation, if this is becoming a common thing, to separate and to say, hey, look, listen, because of your race, you go here. Because of your income status, you go here. Like that's just something amazing to me, because I haven't seen that before. So, no, this is crazy. But I also wanted to check out, want you guys to check out for a minute, this whole entire article right here, which is about critical race theory. And a lot of this has to deal with that woke shit, that wokeism, that whole woke nonsense that's going on, and people to be aware about checking their privilege and all these conversations they done had throughout the years and stuff like that. I used to go to a liberal school, so I've heard these different things before. And usually the conversation goes about being a so-called Black person, look at my pain and look at my struggle. An event for certain people is shut the fuck up, in my honest opinion. Then also you get the splatter of the LGBTQ community is talking about, look at my struggle, look at my struggle. Second or third generation of immigrants that come in and they say, look at my struggle, look at my struggle. It's all a struggle porn, if you really think about it, when these people talk about it. But let's get into critical race theory, because these are things that they're trying to make curriculums in a lot of these schools. Now, a video that I showed you guys, you'll see how they're incorporating Black Lives Matter tenets in these schools, the 13 principles, where I harp on that. There's another one of these wokeism, liberalism, socialism nonsense that they're putting in these schools for children. And it's like, for me, I never came across that when I went to school. We weren't talking about racism like that. We did recognize there were white teachers, there were Black teachers, there were Spanish teachers, all that. But we didn't go over things like that when I was in school. But the sensitivity of this liberalism nonsense that they're putting out now, it's just really crazy to me, because what is the sense of it? You understand? So let's read this. What is critical race theory? In order to understand the problem of critical race training in higher education, parents and students need to understand what critical race theory is and how it is implemented. As discussed below, critical race theory is not the traditional civil rights movement, which sought to provide equal opportunity and dignity without regard to race. Rather, critical race theory and the training to implement it is a radical ideology that focuses on race as a key to understanding society and objectifies people based on race. And this is all about, you know, attacking white supremacy. That's what I think it is. And, you know, they're trying to tear it down and say, oh, yeah, white supremacy. Now, look, listen, I understand the world. I understand what it's like. I'm not going to sit up there and say that white supremacy is not a real thing. You understand? And certain people could tell you the real reason in the original world wasn't even necessarily ruled by so-called white people or Europeans. But we don't have to go there. Let's continue. What is critical race theory? An outgrowth of the European Marxist school of critical theory. Critical race theory is an academic movement which seeks to link racism, race, and power. Unlike the civil rights movement, which sought to work within the structures of American democracy, critical race theorists challenge the very foundations of the liberal order, such as rationalism, constitutional law, and legal reasoning. Critical race theorists argue that American social life, political structures, and economic systems are founded upon race, which in their view is a social construct. A lot of these like liberalism talking points that I start to not care about, you know what I'm saying? Because, you know, it's always still about, you know, white people understand your privilege, understand your privilege. And to me, I'm just like, well, white people don't got to do a goddamn thing and they don't feel like it. Listen, I'm not saying that it doesn't exist, but my thing about it is, when do you take it upon yourself to make sure that you're with your clan and you do what you have to do? If you're pointing out sorrow points, then I don't want to hear it. And I'm not even a so-called white person. You understand? Systemic racism in the eyes of critical race theorists stems from the dominance of race in American life. Critical race theorists and anti-racist advocates argue that because race is a predominant part of American life, racism itself has become internalized into the American conscience. It is because of this, they argue, that there have been significantly different legal and economic outcomes between different racial groups. And you know why I think that is? A lot of these YouTubers have been trying to come on and they try to be like these pro-woke activists and stuff like that. And then they got in the mind of a lot of these people at schools, all these riots, if you remember back in 2015, I think one that was in Washington State, where they had a whole entire, they locked down the school and they was roasting on this so-called white professor and was sitting up there telling him to recognize his white privilege, even though he felt as if like certain things that was going on in the conversation was unnecessary and he wasn't trying to come at people because he's a white man. You understand? Like, it was just a lot of these like wokeism type of things go on. And if I can find it, the video of the video of like the so-called black girl that was making a big deal about these damn so-called white kids that was sitting in the library. But let me finish up, because I'll probably try to show the video after this is done. What are the implications of critical race theory? Advocates of anti-racism and critical race theory use this focus on race to emphasize the importance of identity politics. Movements such as the wave of anti-racist actions at universities and Black Lives Matter, fuck Black Lives Matter, and are some ways in which identity politics and critical race theory has captured the nation's attention. For the political identitarians, simply not being racist is not sufficient. As Boston University professor Ibram X. Kendi, who sounds like a so-called black person in my eyes, what I'm reading, writes in his book, How to Be an Anti-Racist. Racism is descriptive, and the only way to undo racism is to consistently identify and describe it, and then dismantle it. Well, the thing about it is the powers that be in this country, they could do whatever the hell they want. They still can push for the ideologies of racism to happen the way they see fit. That's why I already have an understanding living in this nation as a so-called black man. If it is about racism, it is what it is. I'm going to find my kingdom and work on myself. I'm not going to be concerned with other races of people. And I said this in a prior video where I was just like, you know, y'all got to be concerned about self. Fuck all that other shit y'all talking about. Self-avowed anti-racists are not only expected to push for equity, i.e. the equality of outcome in the broader society, but are also asked to find racism in daily life. Robin DiAngelo, author of White Fragility, writes, the question is not did racism take place? But rather, how did racism manifest in this situation? Well, when they gave over their hands to the so-called white people to rule for the last 200 years. Anti-racists must find these implicit biases in all aspects of life, ranging from discussions in the classroom, which ain't gonna do shit, to interactions between colleagues, which ain't gonna do shit. All of these are fair game. How is critical race theory applied in a classroom? In the wake of the death of George Floyd and the subsequent Black Lives Matter protests, fuck Black Lives Matter, multiple universities have responded to campus activists and outside groups demanding anti-racist actions be taken. Colleges and universities have responded in 9 different ways. Do you guys want me to read this? Yeah, this is crazy. I have a whole entire different point to this, but I'm gonna try to read it as fast as possible. Changing admission policies. In an effort to ensure greater equality of outcome, several universities have taken steps to make their admissions processes more equitable. And I can understand that because they did that at a lot of these colleges. Let me read on. I'm gonna just read the whole thing. These actions can range from scrapping standardized tests to adding a diversity equity scorecard to applications, which, in my opinion, could be that they could be curving the grades for certain students based on race. That's just my theory. I'm not sure if that's true. Implementing anti-racism, bias, and diversity training. Future video. To get students, faculty, and staff to understand their implicit biases, institutions have required them to undergo some form of training, ranging from small groups orientations to full-blown classes. So basically, don't say something out of line that other people might find racist. But we don't know what's racist, but you have to have a conversation on how some things can be inherently racist, but you don't know. That's my opinion. Let me stop playing around. Let me actually read. Changing curriculum requirements. Critical race theorists need to expose the broader public to the supposed racial biases imbued in longstanding institutions. To this, at the collegiate level, advocates have been pushing for changes in the undergraduate curriculum, ranging from a mandatory class on anti-racism to forcing instructors to embed anti-racist ideology in their class material. Instituting disciplinary measures. University administrators have taken steps to clamp down on academic freedom, revising their codes of conduct and commitments to academic freedom by inserting vague language on hate speech and racist language, among other measures. Politically correct anti-racist activism. Institutions have either donated money to political groups like local Black Lives Matter, fuck Black Lives Matter chapters, or redirected students to politically biased organizations in an effort to placate campus activists. Funding critical race theory programs and research. Institutions have poured in thousands, if not millions, of dollars into research on critical race theory and racism, ranging from grants and fellowships to new anti-racist institutes. That's probably because y'all watching BuzzFeed. Reimagining policing in response to campus protests. University administrators have taken steps to either disarm or defund their police departments, often replacing them with unarmed officers or mental health workers. What are y'all gonna do about if a kid gets out of line and they wanna shoot up a school? Providing anti-racist resources. Universities have compiled lists of resources, often making books like How to Be an Anti-Racist and White Fragility free for students, as well as live programming for anti-racist initiatives. Well, that's pretty good, judging the fact matter. I love to read, so having a free book, regardless of how ridiculous these ideologies seem, wouldn't bother me none because I like to read. Taking symbolic actions. Some institutions have not yet taken substantive action to mandate curricular changes and fund critical race theory research. However, they have started anti-racist action committees or renamed supposedly offensive buildings to placate the demand of students. And my thoughts on that is, if you're really talking about doing that, then you need to rename this whole damn country, because a lot of these lands you have now is probably by a so-called white person, British people, Dutch, and all these other people that took over the land of the Aboriginal people of this land. Notice what I'm saying, Aboriginal and not native. Okay. Now, this is the last thing. I'm not going to read. Oh, sorry. Well, that's about it. Damn, hold on, just 1 second.
Talk a little bit about university campus. Look at this vision from
many white people. Oh, this is the announcement.
Makes people uncomfortable.
Public service.
So this video right here, I just wanted to show you a little bit quickly. I think y'all remember this video verbatim, what it was about. The so-called black woman, young black woman that was at this school in, I believe, Virginia. Radical leftist, as it says, and she was voting for segregation because she had seen so-called white people in the library, I guess, which was supposed to be reserved for people of color. And, you know, a lot of people look to pick fights because of racism. Usually I do see sometimes that it is initiated by so-called black people who get mad about so-called white people being in their spaces because they'll bring up old, outdated conversations about redlining, segregation, and these days gentrification. But my whole entire thing about it is, if it was true to be said, that if y'all put up money and put up a committee where so-called black people only voted for a library to be for them, would it then be a conversation? Because if this wasn't something y'all voted on, I would honestly ask y'all, shut the fuck up. Not even honestly ask, just tell y'all, shut the fuck up.
Service announcement. Excuse me. If y'all didn't know, this is the MSC, and frankly, there's just too many white people in here, and this is a space for people of color. So just be really cognizant of the space that you're taking up, because it does make some of us POCs uncomfortable when we see too many white people in here. It's only been open for 4 days, and frankly, there's the whole university for a lot of y'all to be at, and there's very few spaces for us. So keep that in mind. Thank you.
That's right, Sister Soldier. You tell him, you tell him. Boy, oh boy. Look, listen, people, I understand how it was in college. We all had our conversations. It's not like you're going to automatically remove so-called white people out of these institutions and put them somewhere else. And I mean, my honest thing about college is do your work, do what you got to do, and be out. That's always been my motto when I got to college. I have no time fooling around and sitting up there caring about all these clubs and all these meetings. Yes, I was in a couple of clubs, but honestly, it never was in my nature to care about what so-called white people were doing. Just was never in my nature. But I wanted to bring this clip in order to add on into the critical race theory, because it's all about trying to hold one nation accountable for their actions. And you are the upper hand because you got to understand my struggle and understand all of my woke shit in order for me to seem like a person that needs to be treated with more respect. Don't baby me. Yes, slavery happened, but I am bigger than slavery. And this is why I advise so-called black people really learn your history, just like I am now. Because a lot of the things that's going on probably didn't happen or happened in reverse, or there's a lot of misinformation from the story that's being told in these public schools or the school system in general. That's why when it comes to learning the real things, you have to learn it on your own. But see what they're doing with critical race theory, what happened at Columbia University. As it's been known, before I log off, make sure that you like and subscribe. Peace.